Well, hey everybody, how you doing? Oh boy, kind of a gloomy day today, a bit overcast, but we're making it through. Coldest days of winter are today, and hopefully we'll all recover, have a nice beautiful summer soon, I'm hoping. The groundhog apparently said that their spring will be early this year. I hope so. I hope so. I could really use some sunshine, some sunlight, some beautiful weather. What's banging around in my head these days? This pipeline thing, the blockades, and all of that. It's very interesting to me. The media is doing everything it can to turn this into a story that is different than what the story actually is. That's what's fascinating. And the narratives that they're telling are not false narratives. They're not fake, but they're old. And they're deeply entrenched in an old way of thinking about the world and an old way of thinking about how our society functions and is going to continue forward. And so the narratives that are coming out of the media are, oh well, this is a policing issue, that police should be given the authority to do as they should, or should they maybe not? What is the capacity of the police in this whole situation, this ongoing sort of thing? That's one story that gets told. Another story that gets told is, this is a Indigenous rights issue. And it certainly is that. It certainly is an Indigenous rights issue. The rights of the Indigenous people who live on the land that these pipelines want to go through, who are blockading the further growth of these pipelines that are going to destroy us. Well, we can't just go into their land and remove them from the land and just do what we want. I mean, we could, we always have. It's not new for Canada. That's typically how we have operated throughout history. The RCMP was set up specifically to go and decimate First Nations peoples and cause problems for them. And they're upholding that tradition mightily. So the question then becomes, well, okay, John, if that's not what the story is, if that's not what this is about, well, then what is it about? If it's not about, some First Nations people who don't want us to move stuff through their property, through their land, if it's not about the rights of police and all of this, well, what should it be about? Well, here's a narrative. Here's a narrative that I don't see in the mainstream media, including the CBC. If we continue pumping oil, we will destroy ourselves. And if we continue acting in this reckless way, we will destroy ourselves. And we have to really face up to that and start being adults about that. That you have even central banks and high-level financial organizations coming out and starting to say things like, we can't keep investing in the oil industry because the costs that will be incurred upon us will far outweigh any profits that we can generate. But people are stuck on a 4-month cycle, a quarterly cycle. The longest term thinkers are politicians who think in 4-year cycles, election cycles. They're not thinking about 10, 20, 30 years down the road. They don't care about that. They care about getting elected. And it seems as though in sections of the society, if you stand up and you say, oh, hey, climate change is going to destroy us if we continue down this path, then you lose your election. And that's a deep shame. It's a deep shame that acknowledging the truth means that you can't be elected, and people consider you a far left kook if you just simply acknowledge what is factually true. And of course, the pro-polluters, the pro-tar sands people, the people who want to continue doing this activity that's going to destroy us, they bring up all kinds of foolish arguments that don't actually work when you stop and you think about them for any length of time. When you stop and you actually think, like, oh, well, if we stop pumping oil, right, that just means we're going to get buried economically. Because if we transition to a green economy, and we show the rest of the world that we can transition to a green economy. And there are countries that are doing just that. They're transitioning to a green economy. And we're so far behind these countries who are transitioning to this green economy that by the time we finally get our act together, and we actually start funneling the money and figuring out what's going on, we're going to be purchasing from them. Because we've been so slow to react in a rational way, and our reactions have been so inefficient and so ineffectual, so small, that by the time we finally are forced into the position where we're going to have to pull the switch on a lot of this stuff, then we're going to be buying the resources in order to do it from countries who are well ahead of us, who don't plan in these 4-year election cycles, who plan, and I am very much talking about a place like China. China is they've been producing more solar panels. Last year they produced more solar panels than exist in the United States. Like, when push comes to shove, like right at this exact moment, they're experiencing high levels of pollution, they're experiencing high levels of carbon output, but they're preparing for a next iteration. They're preparing for a no-oil future. They're preparing for that. Well, we just seem to be doubling down. We just seem to be hoping that, oh, the oil will simply continue to flow, which is a joke. And if we get out of the oil market, if we stop producing oil, if we stop using oil, it'll have ramifications to our society, but we'll be over them very quickly. We'll be over them very quickly. Because ultimately what we're managing is people's expectations. That's all it is. People want to be able to drive 3 hours a day to get to a job they hate. Then there just comes a point where we have to just start saying too bad, right? Like we just have to start saying too bad to these people. Like, oh, I forgot to bring a reusable bag to get my groceries, and you don't provide plastic throwaway bags any longer. Too bad. Oh, I forgot to bring a thermos, and we don't do crappy little plastic cups anymore. Too bad. Oh, I really wanted to get a 2-liter of pop inside of a big plastic jug that I was going to throw into a landfill so it could sit there for 1,000 years. Too bad. And there just comes a point where what we have to do is we have to stand up and be adults. And that's exactly what the people who are standing at that blockade are doing, is that they're saying with their bodies and through their actions that it is time to be adults. It is time to accept a modicum of sacrifice, an incy-teensy little tiny bit of a sacrifice so that our children can have a better future. I know that the boomers don't sacrifice anything and just extract as much as they possibly can out of the society in order to have a better life for themselves while their parents went off and died to war against the Nazis. But we don't have to be the same way. We don't have to be selfish. We don't have to be arrogant. We don't have to be narcissists. We can say, oh, you know what? Driving 3 hours a day to get to a job I hate, maybe that's stupid. Maybe that's a stupid way of being. Maybe there are alternative ways to do this. And here in Ontario, it was absolutely asinine because that's what we were doing. We were transitioning away from coal and oil and all of these things. We were transitioning away. And then a con man comes in and cons his way into power because, you know, a solid 30% of the society is gullible and stupid and believe that, oh yeah, an extra $200 a year and less taxes, that's definitely going to help me. So, well, got a little dog thing going on here. Little doggies. And so they elect this con man who immediately assaults everything that we've been working on to improve the climate change situation. Just stops it. That would be like launching troops onto the beaches of Normandy, but when you get to the coast, only sending the first wave and just cutting supply lines and just leaving. Like, you're abandoning huge segments of the society. And that's exactly what they've done. And at this stage in the game, I think we just should call these people what they are, which is just that they're evil. Like, they're not stupid. They know exactly what they're doing. They just don't care if it hurts people because they don't care about those people. They obviously don't. They're obvious con men. They're obvious thieves. Like, it's really obvious. And it's not hyperbolic to say. What they're doing with the internet education courses alone, I mean, it's theft. There's no other word for it. They're not trying to improve anybody's education. They're trying to fleece parents. And they don't care if poor people can't graduate. They don't care about that at all. So the absurdity leaks into a much more profound issue. So profound that these idiots can't possibly contemplate it because it's outside their frame of reference. It doesn't fill their pockets with money, so it must not matter. And meanwhile, you've got these First Nations people and their supporters, because not everybody that's doing this blockade is a First Nations person. And they're standing and they're saying, no, you will not build this pipeline. You will not build this pipeline. And you will not transport it by rail. This will stop. Because we had the opportunity to make the transition and to do it as painlessly as possible and to start the process. But now the adults need to start standing up and saying no. And saying, if you will not resolve this politically, then we will resolve it. And it puts Justin Trudeau in a real pickle. Because he talks a good game. He goes to the rallies, shakes his fist along with the rest of us, saying, climate change. Something's got to be done. What are we going to do about this climate change thing? Can you imagine if he sent troops in to clear people who were doing a blockade based on climate change issues? What are the optics on that for him? So he's in a real lose-lose situation because ultimately he works for the oil industry, right? He takes his talking points from them. Go watch the Patriot Act's Hasan Minhaj. I'm totally blanking on his name. That's brutal. I butchered his name. Hasan Minhaj. That's it. I did it. Go watch that interview that Justin Trudeau had with Hasan Minhaj. You'll see the oil talking points. You'll see the cue cards come right out of the oil industry. Oh yeah, we'll take the money that we make from future oil. Forget about the hordes of billions of dollars that these plunderers have stolen and extracted from society. Pay no attention to that. Don't pay any attention to the fact that these thieves have been pillaging us for 30 years straight. Pay no attention to that whatsoever. It's the future earnings, right? So we have to keep pumping oil, or else how else will we get any money from these plundering thieves who are stealing from us every day? We should tax these people out of existence. These oil barons, these tar sand thieves who have stolen our productivity, who have extracted our wealth and have jammed it into offshore accounts. We should banish them. We should take their earnings, drop it to zero. They should have no more money. They should lose their lands. They should lose their titles. They should be thrown out of the society because they're thieves. And I consider that to be the moderate position. I have further opinions that go farther to the, left if you prefer. I don't know why anybody defends these people, these billionaires who literally would murder you for money. And that's the rage that's being felt at the blockades and what we have to do, because these people are trying to kill us, and we should talk about it that way. Anyway, on that happy note, I love you guys. Have fun out there.